We are awakening together. This is our weekly gathering we hold online. For more information, visit our website, awakening-together.org. We'd love to see you there.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Sunday. Happy Easter to those of you who are celebrating Easter. Happy, I guess, Eid Mubarak or Ramadan Mubarak, I guess it is too, for those of you who are fasting, which, it is absolutely that time of year. Happy spring. Welcome home. So what I'd like to do now is read our statement of purpose. We are an assembly of equals, joined in common purpose. And that purpose is awakening to one true self. Within an appearance of many faiths, many cultures, and many symbols, we seek to discern one truth and to rest in its embrace. And we are to pick a core value that represents what it is that we most want to teach ourselves when we give one of these weekly gatherings. So the core value I've chosen for today is core value number 4. And that core value says, we affirm one true self as the only truth. We live this value by embracing what is helpful on the path of awakening without idolizing any spiritual doctrine as truth. Something about that almost feels like a call to go in and just be with what it is that we are called to. Keep hearing the recurrent theme that has been coming up for me lately, which is, why am I here? Like just putting that front and center. And before we play our opening song, I would like to read to you the description that was given to me for this particular gathering by Inner Wisdom. And the title of this, in case you hadn't heard, is Back to Basics. And the description that came in was this: what is it that we are actually seeking? What does uninterrupted peace mean? How do we block our own awareness of our very nature? So our intention for today is to really return to the beginning and look deeply at the nature of what we are and how we overlook, resist, and forget this true nature. And this is not an opportunity for us to judge ourselves, or as I spoke about with the Loving All method, to beat ourselves over the head with the hammer or to judge ourselves in any way. This is an opportunity to just look right at it. So what I'd invite you to do as you listen to our first song, which the first time I heard this, I believe Reverend Marisol played this in her weekly gathering, and it's called The Eye, and it is by Brandy Carlisle. And what I invite you to do is to bring your own inner wisdom to this and your own spiritual aspiration to this, and listen as if this is an invitation directly from God, because I would say that it is. So Sina, if you would please play our opening song. Thank you, Sina. So if you would please join me, take a moment of prayer. As we listen to that invitation to stand in the eye of the hurricane, What I hear is an invitation to trust. If trust is the bridge that is required in this moment, then let that be the bridge that we use. To trust that we are here, and that is the only evidence we need to have to know that we are loved and worthy of this promised uninterrupted peace. We can't ever be other than what we are. We can only pretend. And so it is. Amen. So today, the reading is coming from Angelo Dillulo from his book Awake. And I have been reading that book and have found myself just really, really drawn into knowing truth just by listening to what he's pointing to. And I find myself keep going back. I haven't gotten past chapter 4 at this point, and now I'm back at chapter 3 again, because there feels like there's cobwebs that are in the corners. I know at one point Joy had a program called Sweeping Out the Cobwebs, or Cobwebs in the Corners, something close to that. And that's what it feels like right now, that there are cobwebs. There are places that are whisper thin, that are paper thin, that still get attention. Cobwebs and crevices. Thank you, Sina. And there is a section in chapter 3 called Uninterrupted Peace. And that particular section, I feel, was a beautiful description of what it is that feels most alive to be seeking here. And John Wetzel has graciously agreed to do that reading for us today. So if you're reading along with us, it is on, I don't know what page it's on because it's not showing up on my Kindle right now, but it's in chapter 3. It's towards the end of that chapter. So John, it's all yours.
Good morning. Awakening and realization is ultimately about living your life in uninterrupted peace. I'm not talking about the idea of peace. I'm not talking about walking around in life believing that you're a peaceful person or that you're creating peace in the world. These are merely conceptual or practiced views or practical views. In fact, some people have built identities around being peaceful, are actually deeply divided on the inside, and energetically attract and cause unpeaceful life situations. What I'm talking about is uninterrupted peace as primary to all your other experiences. I'm talking about living life with peace being interwoven into the fabric of all experience. This isn't something you do, by the way. It is a realization of the nature of what is. You see, life doesn't push against itself in any way. Life has no way of pushing against anything because there is no other to push against. Life knows no separation. There is no strain. It flows effortlessly into existence and dissolves without a trace just as effortlessly. So, what is this peace that I'm talking about? What is its nature? How do you know when it's being embodied in your life? I'll answer the last question first. You will know. Trust me on this. It's almost like you're getting away with something. It's like, you mean I don't have to suffer at all and I can just enjoy all of this effortlessly without strain of any kind? It's like winning the lottery in every moment. The rub is that I'm making it sound like something you have to acquire. It's not. It is the natural state before the unsettled, endlessly seeking thought process starts to move. It's already here. We've just sort of forgotten it. We've learned to habitually overlook it. It's not easy to overlook, actually. It takes tremendous energy to do so on an ongoing basis. This expenditure of energy is why we feel exhausted and why we suffer. This is why life often doesn't feel quite right. Sure, we have our stories about that. We blame people and situations for our suffering. But ultimately, it comes down to an ongoing expenditure of energy trying to hold distance between ourselves and life. In doing so, we perpetuate the forgetting of our own true nature. Crazy, isn't it? I want to say something about what peace is not. Peace is not the absence of anger, sadness, or discord. It's full acceptance of these and all other experiences with no resistance whatsoever. You might ask, how can I fully accept anger? I've learned to avoid it in my life so that it doesn't cause destruction. This is one of those things you really have to feel deeply into. The answer is that because of learned resistance to certain feelings, we suppress and distort their natural expression. This ultimately leads to destructive behaviors. Once anger is fully accepted, it is no longer a problem. It has an important role to play in life. It is a guardian of personal boundaries. Sadness has its place as well. It is a normal and healthy response to grief or to letting go. When anger gets suppressed, it eventually surfaces as violence, emotional or otherwise. When sadness becomes suppressed, it surfaces as depression and or anxiety. So the emotions that we've judged as negative or unwelcome in our lives are not the problem, nor have they ever been. The problem, if there can be said to be one, is the resistance to these emotions and experiences. Resistance then becomes a way of describing the ongoing rejection of the uninterrupted peace that is our deepest nature. Through acceptance, we hold all the keys to freedom, to know uninterrupted peace as the canvas on which our lives are painted. How do we reclaim this uninterrupted peace that is our birthright? First, it's not something you do or acquire. It is already here. This takes a measure of faith at the outset. But if you've read this far, it probably makes sense to you. Secondly, the only way in is to be fully authentic. Don't hide from yourself. If you're feeling fear, then own it. If you're feeling anger, then own it. If you're feeling sadness, then own it. If you're feeling shame, guilt, or resentment, then own these. Most importantly, if you're feeling angst, trepidation, or fear about feeling these emotions, then admit that. Authenticity is a starting place. Starting place is always where you are when you're being fully honest with yourself. Why? Because life is authentic. Life is simply what it is and makes no excuses for that. It is not embarrassed about any part of itself. Life never holds back. Life doesn't second guess itself or think that part of itself should not be there. Only the divided human mind can do that. Third, be patient. Simply wanting to feel peace won't get you there. That's just more thought stuff. Wanting is about not allowing. I want because I'm not okay with what I'm feeling right now. I don't like this restlessness, boredom, disease. So I'm going to imagine an alternative reality. Imagination is fine. However, when we imagine because we have a deep sense of dissatisfaction, then our imagination becomes a machinery of division. Worse, this imagining ourselves out of the truth of the moment becomes habitual, involuntary, and at least partially unconscious. This is why we find ourselves on the wheel of suffering and end up asking questions like, how did I get here again? Just start with authenticity to the degree that you can right now. Then be patient. Understand that to come into the deepest authenticity and as a result begin to reclaim the deepest peace that is what we all really want can take some time. Your job isn't to decide how long it'll take for unbroken peace to return. Your job is to be authentically here, to honor each moment. That's it. What I've seen is that the more authentic, present, and willing to feel uncomfortable emotions someone is, the faster they wake up and open to the underlying peace. I've seen some extraordinary transformations in just a couple of years in people who are fully willing to face life in a raw and vulnerable way. Try it.
Thank you, John. That was gorgeous. Appreciate that reading. Appreciate your heartfelt expression of it. So, what I feel is to start at the end. The very last thing I heard Angelo say was try it. And what is it that I am feeling invited to try? And that is to be fully authentic and fully patient. So when I was reading this, it came into me a couple of different times to look up definitions. And one of the definitions I wanted to share with you was the definition of authenticity. Which I know is here somewhere. Authenticity. There it is, right at the top. The definition of authentic. It is of undisputed origin and genuine. That's the first definition. The second definition was made or done in the traditional or original way, or in a way that faithfully resembles an original. And the third is based on facts, accurate or reliable. So when I just kind of sat with the word authentic, what does that actually mean to me after reading the definitions? The only words that come in strongly are self-honesty. And what I notice is self-honesty for me takes a great deal of patience, because the habitual nature has been to self-blame, to self-chastise, to self-guilt, to self-shame, and to claim it all as if I did it and I'm wrong for doing it. So it becomes kind of like a circular loop in which there's no breaking away from unless I really, really slow it down. Be patient, as Angelo encourages us to all do as we walk this path, to be patient and to actually notice. Am I blaming? Am I blaming another? Am I blaming myself? Am I somehow not seeing some version of believing something that just absolutely isn't true? As I listen to his description of uninterrupted peace, what I hear is there is literally no belief, not one belief that can be held on to, because all of that just is like a wet blanket over the uninterrupted peace that we already are. And even as I speak about it, I feel like my gut is churning and I feel the tightness in my chest. And what I notice is the indicator that fear is here. And fear tells me that there's something being believed that is being covered over. And I imagine what is being believed right now. I don't imagine what I hear is being believed right now is a sense of the separate self, Rhoda, who's supposed to be sharing about something authentic, and people must like her. And so all I can do is drop back and ask myself, is that true? And what I feel in this moment is how separation gets created. There's me, there's a you, and there's something needing and wanting to be conveyed that seems to be of me and seems to be separate from you. And so, if I'm being completely honest with myself, what I'm clear about is that this is a habit that I've followed for a long, long time. This people pleasing, fawning, self protection mechanism. And I'm really delighted to see how it covers over peace. And it doesn't mean that peace instantly pops up, but I do notice that something here is watching it. Something here sees the peace. Something here is the peace, actually. And I'm drawn to the words that Angelo wrote, when he says to be patient. And he says, simply wanting to feel peace won't get you there. He also writes, wanting is about not allowing. So I invite us all to sit with, where is it that we are wanting anything? In contemplating the Tao, what is always come through really clearly, which often gets lost in the day-to-day living of life, is that life is happening. It is not happening because of me. There is nothing that this separate ego identity of Rhoda is doing other than covering up what's already happening, other than not being aware of what's already happening. And so when I slow it way down and I notice, what is it that I'm wanting? Can I see every time I'm wanting something, that all I'm actually doing is not allowing what is. And if all I ever really wanted is to know the truth of what I am, is to be awake to the truth of what I am, then while that true desire will point me in the direction, even at some point, that has to be dropped. At some point, the desire to be awake has to be let go. Because even wanting that is not allowing it. Angelo writes that when we imagine we have a deep sense of dissatisfaction, then our imagination becomes the machinery of division. So if I imagine that somehow coming to some state of awakening is going to somehow bring to me uninterrupted peace, because somehow that's not already here. I'm not really sure how that's not already here, but something in here says it's not already here. What I'm hearing very loud and clear is that only mind can cover it up. Mind is the machinery of division. Ego mind is the machinery of division. So imagining that awakening is somehow going to be some state that I am not currently accessing or have access to is just another way, another one of those whisper thin, paper thin beliefs that gets attention. And what I can say about the desire is that it definitely is what the Course in Miracles calls a right-minded desire. But even that desire, when held on to as if that is what is going to save me, just covers it back up. Angelo writes, life is simply what it is, and it makes no excuses for that. It's not embarrassed about any part of itself. Life never holds back. Life doesn't second guess itself or think that part of itself should not be there. And I invite you to just take that in for a moment. And just notice in all of your experience, in your experience in this moment, if you look from that which is aware, is there any desire to hold back? Is there any second guessing happening at all? Over the past week, there's been a bit of travel, and while I was traveling, first thing in the morning, we get up to leave from Colorado, and I get a phone call. And the phone call is from my partner, and he has driven himself to the emergency room because he thinks he's having a heart attack, experiencing some extreme pain. And I notice how this mind immediately kicks into wanting to know. Like, there's nothing like knowing the I know mind when someone you care about is in the hospital far away and you're not talking to the doctors, you're not in the room with them. The I know mind shows up in a zillion different ways. And the way it showed up for me was I kept seeing thoughts of being a bad partner because I wasn't there. I saw thoughts of what Dave should be doing that he's not doing in order to better communicate to me. I saw thoughts of how I should be hearing what the doctor has to say because, somehow Dave just isn't going to quite get it. And clearly, these professionals who are trained for, I don't know, umpteen years and sitting in the emergency room, they may not hear exactly what they need to hear. So you can hear the second guessing. Was life second guessing? Apparently not. But the Rhoda personality had all sorts of second guessing. And as we sat in the airport, I looked up and I saw, and George was sitting across from me. And I looked at George and I said, I cannot believe how frustrating it is to not know. And there it is. Ego mind it has to know. It wants to know. It needs to know. And why does it need to know? Because that's how it creates itself. That's how it structures itself. That's how it holds on to itself. And if I really watch, what I notice is I am actually not doing it. Those thoughts may get attention. Those thoughts may be seen. But those thoughts are actually just showing up. And they are showing up from a programmed, consistent, attention-getting place. This habit has run for a very long time. Rhoda knows best, especially when it comes to the medical issues. And let me tell you about the money. Like Rhoda knows. What I hear when I read this, oh, and by the way, there's embarrassment because, if I were really doing my job as Rhoda, I'd be there. Life apparently is not embarrassed about any part of itself. And life apparently doesn't second guess itself. So for me, this was just like another indicator because what Angelo wrote was only the divided mind can do that. Do what? Second guess itself. Be embarrassed about holding itself back. That's what the divided human mind can do. And so just the gift of seeing that, just the gift of being authentic and patient and honest with myself. It took, by the way, I didn't get home until midnight that night. Dave ended up staying in the hospital. I didn't see Dave until the next day, sometime in the afternoon. And nothing, absolutely, literally nothing went according to plan, according to the plan of this mind that can divide and make plans. Literally nothing. Wasn't his heart, but they kept him in the hospital for 2 more nights. And this mind was on a rampage about how it was going to get fixed, what it was going to do, what I should be doing. And every time I turned around, Dave would say, you don't need to be here. Okay, come visit. But I would literally go to the hospital for an hour, hour and a half at a time, max. And then I'd turn around because that was Dave's request. And I was insistent that I was not going to assert myself in this situation. I wasn't going to be there if he didn't want me there. I wasn't going to pretend that, I know what he wants if he's not speaking it, which is what this mind does. And I got to watch all the ways that the human mind divides itself, all the ways. And as I was walking through the lobby one of the days, all of a sudden I noticed all the thoughts coming in. I mean, and in a way that I had never seen it before. And the way they came in, I've shared this with a few people. The best way that I can describe it is the way that Helen Hamilton describes it. They were like down the hall and the door was shut. I could hear them. I knew they were there. But there was all sorts of diagnosing and describing and judgment happening. And it was kind of like watching it through a filter in a dream. Like somehow something in me just knew that wasn't me. It was like watching the parade go by, that was just happening. So how do I know what anything's for? Who knows? Recently, I heard that because is the greatest way in which we fool ourselves. Anytime. Because what wants to happen right now is this mind wants to say that maybe Dave went into the hospital so that Rhoda could have that experience. That's just another because. That's just another way that mind tries to create some sort of meaning out of something. It's just mind trying to reestablish itself because life never holds back. It shows up exactly how it shows up. It doesn't second guess itself. And it doesn't think any part of it should not be there. Not any part of it. And it doesn't give any rationale. It doesn't tell you why the stars are moving, why the galaxies are revolving, why the earth is moving around the sun. It doesn't tell you that why you're spinning and don't feel it. Doesn't tell you any of this. Doesn't tell you why the sun is behind the clouds today or not behind the clouds today. It doesn't tell, it just is. It just keeps being. So Angelo writes, how do we reclaim this uninterrupted peace that is our birthright? And the first thing he says is that we don't acquire it. It's already here. And he reminds us that at first that requires a measure of faith. And I don't know where I can only say that this for me, after direct experience and direct experience and direct experience, I know peace is here. But I often have to get faith again. When something happens in life that mind gets really stirred up over, I have to sit quietly with faith that this too is perfect. This too is perfect. Angelo wrote that the problem, I love that he says this, the problem, if there can be said to be one, because, problems are all of the human mind. So the problem, if there can be said to be one, is the resistance to the emotions and the experiences. And this was one of the things that I attempted to convey, but let me just say a little bit more about this. In really practicing and knowing the loving all method from a genuine day-to-day, internal practicing of it, I really have come to see all of the emotions that show up here and all of the ways it shows up. And the only thing that gets in the way of loving them, allowing them, accepting them, is resistance to them. It's me judging, the ego mind of Rhoda judging that this shouldn't be here. In the last week, I've noticed dehumanization, get to love and allow that. Living here, not in another, living right here, dehumanization. I've noticed hate, which I've got to notice a lot in the past few months. Hate often lives right here, right in this ego mind. And even as I say those words out loud, I notice, oh my God, are you really telling people that you feel hate? Like, that's freaking embarrassing. Why are you telling people that? And yet, what I know is true from experiencing it over and over and over again is when I look right at it, what I can see is all of the habitual ways that I have trusted the ego mind to protect this separate sense of self. And so in seeing it, there really isn't what I'm starting to really get is that awakening really isn't about what I'm doing. It's just about constantly watching, just constantly noticing, constantly being in touch with what is actually happening. And that, for me, has been the loving all method. It doesn't mean that things don't get done and actions don't get taken. It just means it doesn't matter what's here. Resistance is literally the only thing that stops this uninterrupted peace from being right at the forefront. He says, through acceptance, we hold all the keys to freedom, to know uninterrupted peace as the canvas on which our lives are painted. I'm just going to read that sentence one more time. Through acceptance, we hold all the keys to freedom, to know uninterrupted peace as the canvas on which our lives are painted. I don't know about you, but something in that tells me that we are already perfect. We are already a gift. The very true reality that we are here means we are worthy, we are loved, and we are already free. We are already the uninterrupted peace, and life is just enjoying the hell out of living us. That feels complete. I want to thank you all. And I want to invite you to listen to this next song. This is a love song that has been part of my life for quite some time. And over the last year or so, it has been reinterpreted for me over and over and over again. And so I invite you to listen to this as a dance between you and God, as lyrics between you and God. This is a love song from God to us and to God again, since we aren't really separate. This is called Say It Again, and it is by Natasha Bedingfield. Enjoy. I have so much love for you, so much. We are a church, and as a church, we are supported by your donations. So if you feel called to make a donation today, Sina has placed a link in the chat, and we would invite you to do that as we pass the proverbial hat. We have some time, so if anyone feels called to share, please raise your hand and let us know.
Hi. Yeah, I've been noticing more and more how this path of awakening doesn't really go anywhere. I come back to, there's plenty of other people that have said this, but I just remember Bill Murray and Razor's Edge telling his master that it's time to go find out if you can truly be a wise man living in the world, or words to that effect, as opposed to being a wise man on the top of a mountain. there's this concept that awakening looks like being the wise man on the mountain that lives in here. And, from there, you can only go up. In my mind, you're this high. That's the first. That's pretty high up that ladder rung, and obviously you're going to go and you're going to leave the world behind. It can't be that way. It appears to be. Now, can you live this? And that is that's a question that can only be answered by each and every one of us I imagine, in our experience. And I'm starting to play that game a little bit more. Let's call it a game, because I can't think of anything more appropriate, I guess. And what that looks like to me right now is applying what I know, or what I believe I've learned and what I believe I know, to everything that shows up. And looking at everything that shows up, not as being a mistake or something I need to overcome, just as what is. And there it is. It's for me to look at, experience, and to the best of my ability, not judge. That doesn't always go well, but that's a judgment right there. It goes, I imagine, exactly how it's supposed to go. So I really enjoy what Rhoda did here, just bringing everybody into what it looks like when you're, quote unquote, on the ground in the world after being up there. And I just say thank you. And I hope I can remember that a little bit more often than I forget it. And thank you for having me read today also.
Thank you, John. Just letting life live life, aren't we? Beautiful, beautiful. I have one last song that I'd really just love to close this out with. It was actually supposed to be my second song, and then something came in and said, no, it wasn't. So this is one I believe we probably all know. It's called All You Need Is Love by the Beatles. Thank you so much. I just adore that song. All you need is love, baby. Thank you all. Thank you for spending time this morning. Happy Easter again to those of you who are celebrating Easter. Ramadan Mubarak to those of you who are celebrating Ramadan. Love you all. And happy Passover. I think that's coming this coming week too. We got them all covered here. Love you. Back to you, Miss Dinah.
Been watching our online gathering. It happens weekly on Sundays at 10:15 a.m. Eastern Time. To join us live in the sanctuary, visit our website, awakening-together.org. You'll want to click on Online Sanctuary in the main menu, and then in the drop-down menu, look for How to Enter the Sanctuary. Right there at the top of the page is a clickable link. We'd love to see you in the sanctuary and join with you in fellowship. Thank you again for watching. Also, please know that if you'd like to stay connected via the Awakening Together channel here on YouTube, you can subscribe and hit the bell for more notifications. We hope to see you in the sanctuary.